Hello, I'm Reggie Turner, and I'm here with Terrence Moore and Jim Miller. The FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. Tonight we're here with Carly Hose, Public Information Officer for the Washington County Sheriff's Department. Carly, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. First, tell us a little bit about who you are.
I have been in law enforcement for 18 years with the Sheriff's Office since 2007. While doing that, I've worked in a number of different roles, one being school resource officer. Then I was moved into community relations crime prevention, which also the public information officer title came along with that. And now I serve as the supervisor for school resource.
Excellent. Excellent. Jim.
So you're acclimating our youth to be respectful of police and that you're here to help and those types of things. Is that accurate?
Building relationships. Absolutely.
Okay. We definitely want to get into that later, but for now we're here to talk about shopping with the sheriff. Tell us about that. We saw an article in the Herald Mail. That's an amazing idea. How did that start?
The program originally started as Shop with the Cop. Everyone I'm sure has heard that. Well, we had to change it up a little bit because we are the Sheriff's Office. So we put Shop with the Sheriff on there. I have had the program for 10 years. Actually, we're sitting here talking and just realized, like, wow, it's been 10 years that I've had that. But it started initially, we had 4 children selected that would go shopping, and it just grew to the following year, added another one. To our biggest year, we actually had ended up buying for 17 children.
Wow.
Things have changed a little bit with COVID the past 2 years, but we're hoping that we get back to the original way that we operated the program.
Can you share a little bit about which schools are involved and how the children are selected for the program?
So our school resource officers, we have one that is responsible for the Hancock Clear Spring schools. We have another one that's responsible for the Williamsport schools, and then the Boonesboro schools and the Smithsburg schools. So each of those have a school resource officer. As they are going to their schools, getting to know their kids, particularly the elementary school age kids, they make contact with the children and can observe who's in need. Who is this program going to serve best? And that's how the selections start. They also will collaborate with the schools to get a little bit more information to see which families we can help the most.
So it goes back to those relationships. Mm-hmm. So they build those relationships so they can identify maybe what youth in those schools may need it the most.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Can you walk us through what the experience is for the kids?
So I can give you the pre-COVID experience and then the post-COVID experience. Pre-COVID, how the program would work is the children would be told to be at the sheriff's office at a particular time. When they arrived, they would get Santa hats and their own IDs. We'd have sheriff's office IDs made up for them, and they'd have their own badge, and they'd be given their deputy for the night. And the child and their guardian would go with that deputy. Everyone would get their deputy. They go to the vehicles, and all the vehicles would travel over to, we take them shopping at Target, over to Target. They are given $200 gift certificates, and they go off with their deputy, and they spend their money that way. Once shopping's complete over there, we drive back to the sheriff's office where there's a meal, some desserts, and a special jolly guest comes in too while we're there. But it's a wonderful evening. They get to know the kids get to know us and everyone. I think we have when just a little bit more fun than the kids do, just getting to do that. So yeah, it's a good time. That's pre-COVID. When COVID hit, we still wanted the program to operate and go through, figuring out how do we do that. So we selected our kids, 4 different families, and then what we decided we were doing is that child and every other child in the family was going to receive Christmas gifts that we're going to shop for. So we had the parents fill out lists, wish lists, things that they wanted, and the deputies, we went out to the store, we bought the items, came back, wrapped everything. We also got additional gift certificates, food items, things for the parents. Got it all together, and we made a trip across county with our special guest and dropped the items off. So that's what we've done the past 2 years.
And you had said earlier that you're hoping to get back to pre-COVID
Yes.
at some point?
Yes, it's a lot more people, and it's fun both ways. But I enjoy watching the kids shop. I think that's a good time, and watching them kind of boss our guys around a little bit.
They probably enjoy that too.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Well, post-COVID, Santa got a different kind of sleigh now as well, right?
Yes, he did. When we were going out and delivering, we would have our marked police vehicles, and then our armored vehicle, Santa got a special ride. So when we pull up to the house, there's a turret at the top, so he'd come out the top and wave and talk to the kids, and it was really neat. There was one little boy that I was talking about that when we got to the house said, come outside and see Santa. And he was like, oh, okay. So he comes out and he stops and he looks and he goes, oh, that's Santa. He's telling me, I said, I know you want to go talk to him, but that's Santa. I said, let's go talk to him. But it's just, it's that stuff you can't get any better than that. That's awesome. So.
Yeah. Have you had feedback? You said you've been operating it for 10 years. Obviously, some of those kids are probably teens or even perhaps out of school. Have you had any feedback? Have any of the officers run into former shopping with the sheriff participants?
Our school resource officers, with them being in their schools, will see their kids more often. There was one child that I was paired with, and it was probably about 3 years after the program. I happened to run into their family out at the store and talking to them, and they remember you, and they'll have a conversation, and it's really nice to see that, and it's like, hey, how are you? And for them to recognize me out of uniform says a lot too, so that was pretty neat.
Okay, so you were out of uniform and they still recognized you.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now, how is this program funded?
Donations through the community.
Okay.
That's a big portion of it. The sheriff's office does have a shredding event program that we run, and as part of that, we'll take prescription medications. You can shred materials, but we ask for donations. It's not required, so people don't have to. But that's another way that we collect as well.
And how are those donations solicited?
Word of mouth. People know that we do this program, and they make the donations. We have a couple organizations that every year they give to our program, which is fantastic.
And I think you said off camera as well that those organizations, despite the downturn of COVID, still stepped up to make sure that it was funded last year as well.
Yes, they did. And that was because we didn't have our shredding event, which normally is a large sum of money that comes in for us towards the program. So the fact that they were still able to fund that and we were able to keep the program running was it was great.
Now you're saying the shredding event, how does that impact? I'm not making the connection between, you said the shredding event is a large influx of money.
The donations that come in with that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so you get donate, okay,
Yes.
gotcha. Okay.
So if our viewers would be interested in donating to the program, how would they be able to do so?
You contact the sheriff's office. They could give me a call out there and we can make that arrangement.
Excellent.
Okay.
Terrence?
And I know, talking dollars and cents, just the minimum to pull this off for the minimum amount of children, though there's so many children in need. I think you said that dollar amount is around $3,500 minimum.
Yes.
And there's always a surprise as well that comes up. Can you share that story?
So not this year, our first COVID year, we had one family selected, and just in conversation, the school resource officer found out that there was another family that lived in the house with them. And if you're going to a house and delivering gifts, you can't deliver just for a couple kids. There's like 10 other people in the house. So it was like, well, I guess we got to go shopping and see what we can come up with. And actually a couple of people at the department donated some toys, and we were able to pull that together, and it was a very large drop off. But it was great,
So your budget, your annual budget for this, what is your annual budget for that? Let me ask
I need at least $3,500. I can pull it off with that.
Wow.
If there's more, I can do more.
And when you say do more, is there a capacity in terms of the number of children you can serve? Obviously, there's only so many deputies.
Yes. We give $200 a piece for the kids. So, and you go through, they said last year with that overabundance, people actually were donating specific gifts too. We were able to get those, to get that everyone had something when we went out. But yeah.
Wow.
And as far as city police, state police, are they all involved in this program, or?
So every agency has their variation. I know the Hagerstown Police Department has theirs, and they service children within the city limits. State Police has theirs as well. And they all have slightly different names, but it's the same premise.
Gives you greater reach.
Yes, yeah, you can do more for the community. And then we like to go through, if the state police is going to particular schools, we'll service schools that they're not going to, so spread it around.
And you have resource officers in all of the, which, do you service elementary, middle, and high school?
Correct. So one school resource officer is responsible for their high school, and then all the feeder schools that go to their high school.
Oh, okay, so you have one resource officer per campus, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So one for Smithsburg, one for Boonesboro, one for Williamsport, Hancock, Clear Spring.
Hancock and Clear Spring share one.
Oh, do they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
And for all the years that you've had this program, has Target always been where you've shopped?
We, for the most part, we had a not great experience at one place, so we stuck with one. With Target's always been fantastic. They did have where you could apply for a grant. Some years we got it, some we didn't. But even without getting that, they'll set aside employees to help with getting us through the lines faster. If you need help with things, they've had goodie bags in the past for the kids, so they've always been a wonderful community partner.
Excellent. It's great to see that you're getting support both ways, not only from donors, but the store that your patron is contributing as well.
Yeah, they've always been more than happy to help, so it makes the night go smoother.
So what does this year look like for the program?
So we actually went out on the 14th of December, so we've had ours for this year. We had 10 children that we went through, dropped off at the house. Santa had his special ride again this year, and it was a good year. It was a good year.
You know, one thing I know from personal experience, many times when you're giving to others, you normally receive more
Yes.
than what you give. What's been your experience? Like, what have you taken away from this experience with the kids?
Christmas has always kind of been like, oh, you get in the routine of doing it and just, I need to get through it, I need to get it done. And this program every year, and this is just for me, like it gives me the holiday spirit, so to speak. Like it really, it's like, okay, I can do Christmas now. We get through that. It's nice to be able to go, and we're not going to these houses because something bad has happened.
Right.
We're there for a good reason. A lot of times people don't invite the police to come in just to hang out, but this is an evening where we get to do that and have a really good bridge building experience with our community.
Excellent, excellent.
I think that's a great point. I think with the season, we get caught up in the season of giving, not who we should be giving to so much. And I think I know myself just sat down, spent a lot of money on people that don't need it in my family. and that money could have probably been better served to those people who are in a greater need. And I think we miss out on that sometimes as well during this season.
Yeah, this year I have a 14-year-old, and she came along to watch, and I thought it was very important and help give out gifts and those kinds of things, just to instill that you have a sense of community, you have to give back to your community. You know, everyone is in the same boat that you're in, and you need to be understanding of that. So trying to get through that to a 14-year-old.
Yeah. Well, I will commit at this point that the FlipSide will provide sponsorship for 2 individuals next year, so $400.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
And if you want to come back and see us in the September-October timeframe of next year, we can talk about maybe doing something where we would match others that would be contributing.
Oh, fantastic.
So
Absolutely.
let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
All right. Can we get you to stay around with us and talk about some of the other programs that you have as well?
Sure.
Awesome. Next up, stay with us. More with Deputy Hose when we come back. Welcome back for another segment with Deputy Hose. Thank you for staying with us.
Absolutely.
You know, we talked during the break in regards to some of the other programs that the Sheriff's Office does, and the ability and the need to build relationships. Can you speak a little bit about the other programs that you also participate?
I think the biggest one that we had talked about is our school resource officer program. And we have our school resource officers within our schools in the county. We have an excellent working relationship with Washington County Public Schools. Great thing keeping kids safe, staff safe, but it's also building relationships with those students at those schools that when they have to interact with us outside of there, you've got someone that you know. And that's extremely important.
Or even if it's somebody you don't know, it's somebody representing an agency where you have the connection.
Yes.
What a school resource officer, what is their daily interaction with the kids in either the high school, the middle school, the elementary school? What does that look like?
They can handle anything from if there's an outside threat towards the school versus a mentorship type aspect. They see a child that's struggling, had some issues where it's not quite, it's a law enforcement issue, but just they need some guidance. They need someone to be a good role model and step in and talk to them. You have a lot of those relationships. The educational component, they will go into health classes and talk about, use the example of dangers of driving under the influence of alcohol. Things along those lines. They'll go in and speak in government classes as far as what the role of a law enforcement officer is. And just being part of the school. You very much, and they said I was a school resource officer for several years. Those become your kids, and you become vested in that school. To even, they'd have like a charity basketball game. I'd go, I'm terrible at basketball, but I was like, okay, you go and play and you get to those kids, and then they will let you know what's going on in the community as well. It amazed me the information that the kids would come in and be like, hey, this is, it's not necessarily school related, but this is what I see going on in my neighborhood, and you can use that information to hopefully stop that.
Prevent.
Yeah.
Prevent rather than react.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful program to have.
What about the social interaction with those children?
As far as they get to see that we're people, that we talked about a lot of times when law enforcement becomes involved with something, it's not because someone's having a good day. With the kids and being in school, it can be. I can go up to a student, hey, how's your day going? How's things looking? How's whatever sports team you're going on, or how's this class going? You can have those positive interactions. It's not all just negative because something bad happened to you.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you can give them guidance to go through to try to keep some of those bad things from happening, or making those positive choices in life that they become successful.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception of what those school resource officers are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think public relations of law enforcement is difficult in itself. Because I always see every time there's an incident, maybe a national incident, we see so many of these these acts happening in schools and communities. Also, they come out publicly, but it doesn't seem like we see enough of them day to day. And we know it's happening. We have resource officers that are doing the work, but we don't see it enough, and it always seems like it's forced because something happens. And we had a great conversations about how do you walk the line of humility, right? You're not doing it for recognition, but you have to do it for awareness. So talk a little bit about what that looks like in the community.
I'll go back to shop with the sheriff a little bit. One of the families, the child had wanted an item that you needed a TV to hook up to, some sort of video game or whatnot, but the family didn't have that. My deputy knew he had an extra TV at home and didn't tell anyone, went home, made the delivery, got the family hooked up with it, so that child's Christmas gift that they got from our program worked. He didn't do it, he of course didn't tell us, but the family came back and was like, hey, we really appreciate that, and they reached out on that end. A lot of the guys, they want to see these kids succeed. They want to build those relationships. We live in these communities too. It's not just I'm driving an hour and coming in. I live in Washington County. The guys I work with live in Washington County. So we have a vested interest to have those relationships and to get to know the kids and to try to be those good role models and mentors for them, because it's just going to keep bettering our community.
That's great. That's good to hear. And sometimes when you do for others, there's a pride You know, that comes out of community as well. I know that the perception is always people want a handout, but I think more so than I know, and you know that I know of working in the community, a lot of people don't want a handout, and they sometimes will reject anything because of shame that's attached to poverty at times, or shame that's attached to living in certain communities, or just the pride of wanting to do for yourself and not being recognized that someone has to give you something or donate something to you, which is a difficult line to kind of work, to make sure that you know you help someone, but at the same time keep their pride and keep their self, you know, whole and not impact that. And when you have in these relationships, and how do you build those relationships past the children with the parents?
We had, and I use Shop with the Sheriff as the example a lot of times, because that's one of our things that we do. It's a really great program. We had a family where the mother had recently been deceased. There were 2 children that were selected, and Dad was very reluctant for the reasons of, we don't take handouts, we're not, you know, going to do that. And we had to go to him and say, please, let us do this for your kids. We're not going to take any pictures of you guys, but let them have this, let us do this. So it took some convincing, and he did, and the kids had a great time, and you know, we were probably more tickled to do that for that family because of what they had been through to do. So it definitely, sometimes it takes some like this is not a matter of we're trying to shine ourselves up. We want to do for you. This is what we do. So
back to the school resource officer piece of it, and you've talked a lot about helping the kids that are at risk and helping the kids that may be on the verge of potentially a law violation, or obviously sometimes they have violated. What about the high performers? Because it occurs to me that our job is not to play to the least common denominator, it's to raise it. What interactions do you have? Do you have relationships with those that don't have any of those kind of troubles, that are the A student, that are the great basketball, volleyball, you name the sport type players?
Just being in that school, you're going to get to know your student body, whether it's the students that are having difficulties or, as you said, the ones that are excelling. You're going to get to know them. And that's just a matter of going through and talking to your kids, participating in when they have different events. I would go to, they had the different theater performances and whatnot. I'd go to those after school activities, and I know the guys that I work with do that as well, and they go on their time. It's because you're supporting your school system. So you're not just in there with the high-risk kids, you are supporting the school as a whole and your kids that are there as a whole.
And would you say also that there's more kids who are more likely to be victims of crime than there is for kids to commit crimes? I think we focus sometimes on a small few that may get in trouble, who may commit crimes, but there's a lot of youth that may be the victim of crime who may need police intervention, you know, or law enforcement intervention at times that don't reach out because of those relationships. And I believe the numbers are more vastly leading towards victims of crime versus those who commit crimes.
Well, that's an interesting point. How do those relationships, if you have, for example, a young girl that has a sexual assault that may not report it otherwise, but for the fact that she knows the school resource officer.
And that has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that absolutely has happened.
Wow, I got 2 daughters. I don't even want to think about that.
And I kind of pointed out, I was a latchkey kid. At a young age, parents working, I had to come home and bring my younger sibling into the household. And sometimes it's 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and there were laws you abide by. You don't answer the phone, you don't answer the door, you don't touch the stove. And every time I see a young kids die in maybe a home fire or something in the middle of the day or in the afternoon, and the kids were the only ones in the household, or they would agree, it just makes me think, was it because they didn't want to pick up the phone and call 911 out of fear? We don't have those fire drills, with latchkey kids, but having that relationship, maybe that can create a comfort when contrary to the controls put in place by a parent to protect the child, that there are greater controls outside of that, and the child can feel comfortable reaching out and learning more about law enforcement. And you said a lot of education happens as well. Yeah. What does some of that education looks like inside the schools?
Like I said, a lot of it the health class stands out because you talk about making good choices and the dangers of when you don't make those good choices, whether it's drug, alcohol abuse. We talk about dating, safety, things along those. We even talk about with driver's ed when they go through rules of the road. That was another part of it. We touched base with with those things, just that's going to be your safety component and being able to get to them. We'll also go into elementary school classes, and whether it's we're just reading a book, which we do Read Across America week. We normally are good to be able to get into a lot of classrooms and read, talking about community helpers, how to keep yourself safe. Those are things that we go in and we have those conversations with the kids, and you hope that they're hearing that and that they follow with it. And it's like, okay, well, you're telling me this, and I get to see you walking around, and then you've also been into my classroom talking to me. So, okay, I think I can trust what you're saying.
Nice.
Now, you've talked about Washington County Public Schools as a great partner. Are there other community partners that you have?
With our school resource officer program, obviously WCPS is who we're going to be working
Right.
with the most on there. We have different organizations within the community that are good to reach out, and I'm having, they're not coming to me right now.
You have multiple partners
yes,
for
we
different,
do.
different elements.
We do, but it really does take a community to take care of a community. So when we can go and you have those connections and those partnerships, and you're able to, whether it's a Shop with the Sheriff program or something completely different, we'll go out into different neighborhood watch groups and present safety presentations, or just talk about crime trends and things that we're seeing going on, home safety, personal safety. Go into church groups. We also have our active threat training that we give, where we'll talk, whether it's businesses, just different organizations we'll go into and give those presentations, and they're all free of charge. It's just a service that we provide our community, because it educates our community, and an educated community is a safer community.
You had mentioned in the first segment relative to the Shop with the Sheriff, the Shred event. Talk to us about what that is and the purpose, and how it's a fundraising opportunity for you.
So the Shred event is basically us helping the community prevent becoming victims of identity theft. If you really look at the mail that you get and how much information's in it, even junk mail, it's got a lot of your very pertinent information on there.
Yeah.
And if you just take it and you throw it in the trash, you've kind of left it for anyone to come across. Because criminals will dumpster dive, they'll go through trash, and they'll get a hold of it. But by shredding it, obviously you can't read the documents, and the information is no longer there for someone to get a hold of. So by offering these shredding events, anyone that maybe has collected more than their Walmart shredder can handle, they can bring it out and actually watch it go in to the truck and be shredded right there on premise. And the point is being so it lessens their chances of becoming a victim of identity theft. We also run our prescription drug turn-in program as part of that, where we take the medications and properly dispose of them, so not getting flushed down toilets or thrown out into the dump or landfill. But we'll take them, get rid of those free of charge, and then as part of that, if they want to make a donation to either Shop with the Sheriff or whatever nonprofit we have with us that day, they can choose to. But we'll still let them do their shredding and take the medications, whether they donate or not.
Excellent.
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 And outside of, in addition to donations and funds, how can the community help you help the community more?
I guess a lot of it becomes feedback, reaching out and telling us if they see a need somewhere that we're not seeing. Use the same thing like with crime. If we don't know, if you're not calling, we don't know that it's happening necessarily. You can put that on a community element as well. Hey, listen, I really think that the need for this particular program is here. Can we do that? And absolutely, if we don't have it, we'll work on putting something together that meets those needs. So reaching out and just keeping those open lines of communication. I mean, we can see what we think that they need, but the community knows what they need as well.
You've only got so many feet on the street.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us and sharing all the information. You've already received the commitment from Jim in regards to the FlipSide, so I'm sure we're going to get another opportunity to talk about how this program grows in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much for having me.
Awesome. Up next, 3 panelists, 5 topics in 10 minutes. Stay with us for Fast 5. Welcome back to the show and welcome to Fast 5. First topic, gentlemen. Washington County nonprofit is expecting almost 6.5 million more to help with rent and utilities.
Yeah, that's on top of the 9.4 million. So that's good news, maybe?
A little concerning to me.
Okay. I don't know what to make of it, honestly.
It's a lot of money. You think about $9.4 million was received, and they ran out early this month.
Right.
So they stopped taking applications with an assumption, with no guarantee that they were going to get additional funding. Now that we're seeing additional funding coming in, so you have another $6 million coming into the community, and we also know that the utility bills have $3.3 million in outstanding utility bills right here in Hagerstown as well, and CAC, who's managing this money, also has programs for utility bills. I'm assuming that we should be a little bit further along with this right now, with this money. Is it a transition that's happening? Is it creating a dependency on some of this money for some of these individuals? And are some of the landlords basically as well on the other end taking in some of this money, and are they re-signing leases? Is there a transition for what happens when this money runs out? It leaves a lot of worries and concerns, a lot of the concerns that we had with some of the businesses with PPP money, right? And not really having the controls in place to ensure that the money was doing what it was supposed to do, instead of possibly creating larger issues that may come about in the months or years to come in the community. So,
Yeah, I think I would like to dig into this a little bit more, but like you, Reggie, I'm happy that we have the help. I'm a little concerned just about the oversight and the assuring that the new money, the $6.5 million, which is not chump change, is being used appropriately.
There's always two sides, and there's two sides for me on this one. Whenever the government is dropping money from the helicopter, what's the catchwords? Waste, fraud, and abuse, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my number one concern. If there is minimal waste, fraud, and abuse, what is this saying about our underlying economy?
Mm-hmm.
Because what we've also seen in the news is that obviously the unemployment rate is coming down, but our unemployment rate is significantly higher than what the national average is. What is this saying about the community? And I even think back to what Julie Rom was saying last week in regards to how our community is kind of a laggard of some of the national trends.
We're a lagging indicator of
Right.
national economic
Right.
trends.
So does that mean that there's more pain to be seen economically within our community, and this is one of those signs of that?
Well, and the reality is that I don't think our larger state or even nationally has seen the pain that maybe they would have because of all of the influx in cash. And I know we're going to talk about the Build Back Better and the fact that Joe Manchin could maybe single-handedly stop that, but what happens when, not if, because the government cannot continue to dump money into this economy. Mm-hmm. What happens?
And there's some qualifiers there, and I'm sure there's people who are actually in need, who are working, and we know we have a large working poor in this community as well that are in need to try to catch up from what happened during COVID as well. But I'm sorry to have to play devil's advocate, but we also need people to work. There's signs everywhere for people to come back to work, and when rent is the largest largest way you spend your money and the largest contributor in your house, or the largest bill that you have to pay, and your utility bills, and know that utility bills aren't being paid, rent aren't being paid, but yes, there's some kind of subsidy that's paying it for individuals. Is it motivating people to get back to work?
Well, it's not, obviously. And at what level does that account for the Great Resignation, as it's termed? Because if I can make more for sitting on the couch, watching my free TV and my free internet, and
Right, and even with landlords, what happens when this money runs out? And we know that housing prices have went up. Do we see a huge influx in rent that may go up as well substantially? Right. As soon as this lease is out, you're evicted. We see evictions are still happening, and they're happening at alarming rates still, even though we're seeing almost $9 million come into this community. Why are we still seeing so many evictions? And rent rates are going up, and finding housing is difficult. So I believe that there's going to be a domino effect of this money that is going to either keep us from advancing out of COVID as quickly as we should, or create larger problems we're going to be having to deal with in the next months and years to come, as I stated.
Yeah. As we always say, this is one of those topics I'm certain that we will revisit.
I am certain we will as well.
Next topic. Maryland adds 8,400 jobs in November. Unemployment increases to 5.4%.
Decreases to 5.4%.
Decreases to 5.4%. But the key thing here, and I was mentioning it with the last topic, is that the national unemployment average is 4.2.
Right.
So,
and that's where it was pre-COVID, correct? Around those numbers as well.
Yeah.
So we've returned back to unemployment rates pre-COVID. We do see higher rates in the state of Maryland as well, and we still have a job shortage. So
how does that work?
right.
And and I know that Maryland is not at the $15 an hour minimum wage, but wages have increased. Period. I don't care whether I see signs out, come load boxes at this one of the companies that delivers packages for $20 to $24 an hour. That's above the $15 an hour raise or wage.
Well, part of the issue is that we can see unemployment decrease, but if more people have dropped out of the workforce,
exactly,
that number is always skewed.
It absolutely
and it's not just the great resignation; it's the great retirement.
Well,
because a lot of people that have gotten close to retirement age in the midst of going through COVID, getting the opportunity to work from home or spend more time at home,
right,
started looking at that work-life balance. And if they were in position, they've decided not to go back into the workplace.
Right.
And it accelerated that as well, because a lot of those who resigned took a hit back in 2008 and seemed like they were going to have to work well past 65 into 67 into 70 before they retired. And then there was some people on the cusp, and they said the average savings account now is 50% higher than it was pre-COVID. So you have more money all of a sudden, so it helps you accelerate and make some of those choices, whether or not you should retire or not. And let's not forget, we lost lives. Those were jobs as well. And the hardest areas hit was our elderly and probably a lot who moved into retirement, who took a lot of that knowledge and information in the workforce with them. So as you know, running businesses, when someone more senior, tenured in your organization leaves, you don't usually replace them with a one-to-one. You usually have to bring in multiple people and skill sets to replace that individual. So I believe a lot of those individuals who were doing multiple jobs for companies, they lost that knowledge, and now they need more people to do that work. So I think that's why we don't see the numbers correlating right back to, people needing jobs and unemployment rates still getting lower. But education becomes important even more so now.
It absolutely does.
Yeah, because we are seeing that many of the jobs that need to be filled, there's not enough workers that have the educational level to fill those jobs. And many economists are saying that that's going to be a long-term problem that we're going to see within our community. So some digging into these numbers would be interesting to see. And again, this is one of these things that's going to flesh itself out over time.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right about what I'll term, and I think this is the official term, structural unemployment. Mm-hmm. So we have some jobs, we just don't have qualified candidates to fill them. And I've run into that in my industry. In the technology industry. And the reality is that, we are in a post-COVID world much more dependent on technology, and some of the older workforce was just not ready to make that transition. Mm-hmm. Frankly, some of the newer workforce is not ready to, the younger workforce is not ready to make that transition. And that is, to your point, a training issue at its core.
And like you said, technology, we've seen innovation happening at a lightning fast rate over the last 2 years. So, technology and automation has also knocked jobs out of the market.
Yep.
and created new jobs. But to run that automation is not something you can unfortunately do with a degree of certification most of the time. It takes years of education to run the new technology that has knocked the jobs out. So that furthers that gap as well. So I think we have, again, another huge problem with education. How do we get people educated enough to actually run the technology that's automated these people out of jobs?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, next topic. Joe Manchin of West Virginia says he won't vote for the Build Back Better Act.
Right. And the Republicans are praising him and the Democrats are cursing him. And the reality is we should be celebrating the fact that we have an elected official that is willing to vote their conscience rather than vote, be locked to the party lines. Because let's face it, if people are being truthful, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, I would bet that very few, if any of us, are in lockstep with the Republican or Democrat positions in total. We may be 80%, 90%, maybe 95%, but there's something there that you don't agree with. And I think that those differences should be celebrated, and we need to learn how to come to the table and work together to find solutions, not work together to fight with each other 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I think Republicans celebrating Joe Manchin is kind of short-lived, right? As long as he's agreeing,
and that's fine.
They're,
and you know what? It
they're
will
celebrating.
Be. It will
him.
be. And you know what? When I disagree with a politician, when I agree with a politician, my support might be short-lived as well. But the fact of the matter is that we are going to have differences, and we should explore those. We are a pluralistic society. This whole country is built on the fact that there's more than one opinion, there's more than one answer, and we should be celebrating that.
I just think to sum it all up, that the Republicans agree with Joe Manchin. It says the system still broke, right? It's not about the individual. I agree. If you got to go back home, what I love what he did say was, if I don't agree with this, I got to be able to go back to my constituents and explain it to them. And I will love more politicians to do that. Go back and understand that they're there to represent the people. They're
Right.
employed by their constituents. But I still think we create these idols and these superheroes of legislators who are out there just supposed to be doing the job representing the people, and the people behind get lost in it.
They do. Because who they're representing is the party bosses at either
Right.
the Republican or Democratic
Right.
Party, which is exactly who they're not supposed to be representing.
Yep. And by placing one legislator's name in a headline, aren't we just doing exactly that?
Well, that's right. and the news media is going to glob onto it because, well, it sells.
Well, what they're doing is, Manchin is collecting more and more power, right? Because every time there is a hot button issue, he's looked at as kind of the swing vote.
Yes, he is. Joe Manchin for president.
That's what I'm saying. It sounds like an agenda that we're centralizing all this on one legislator, when multiple legislators may agree or disagree,
Right.
but we're giving this individual so much power that we're creating an idol that ultimately that is going to be able to will their way in their decisions. That doesn't sound like democracy. I'm sorry.
To be continued on this one, right?
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to
Fortunately.
hear more about that. But you think about it from an electoral perspective, this could be a good or a bad thing, because now if he's got some level of Republican support as well as some level of Democrat, at this table we have discussed sometimes that the majority lies in the middle, not at the far left or the far right. Can he get to that majority vote and get reelected based on that middle?
Well, he's in a unique place, right? Because he's a Democrat in a conservative state.
That's true.
So how he views issues, how he takes it back to his constituents is very much different than many of his colleagues.
That's probably true.
in Congress.
And the ones that in the middle, unfortunately, a large percent in the middle have given up and don't care.
That's
And don't
they're-
trust government altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Next topic. In the Boston Globe op-ed, a law professor asked for a redo of the First Amendment. Mr. Moore.
and the Second Amendment. Let's not forget about
Oh yeah,
that one.
and the Second Amendment.
I'm for it. We've run our country on a document that we've seen that we pick and choose. The Constitution has become the Bible, right? People want to use it when it works for them, and want to go against it when it doesn't. They take things out of context, they manipulate it, and the subtleties of wording. And I think the biggest issue here, they said these amendments aren't looked at holistically when you look at it in relation to the entire Constitution. We keep pulling it out and then addressing it as independent amendments. I agree with that. It's like pulling a Bible verse and using that Bible verse to really drive home your point. It doesn't work. We have to really have more people educated around this document as well. That's another thing. I guarantee you, a larger percentage of our country don't even know what's in the Constitution, but held to it every single day of their lives. Again, I don't think we tear it down all the way to the framework, but I think there's some open conversation. I know our Supreme Court is supposed to be doing this, but once again, the only time they do this is when it's being challenged, and they do it in a vacuum around a specific issue.
Jim, this professor is Mary Ann Franks. She is a law professor at the University of Miami School. And one of the interesting things she said is the Constitution or the First Amendment continues to be interpreted in aggressively individualistic ways to ignore the reality of conflict among competing rights.
Okay. Competing rights. I remember, and I don't remember what elementary school teacher it was, but I remember an elementary school teacher who I respected told me that I am free to the extent that I don't impinge on your freedom or your freedom or somebody else's freedom. So yes, there are things that I can't do, but we're talking about freedom of speech here. And freedom of speech, in my mind, is me being able to stand up on my soapbox and say through the largest microphone and speaker system something that I believe with all my heart that you would stand on your soapbox and speak against with all your heart. And I think that's a basic tenet of where of what the United States is. Now, do I like the fact that the way some of that is done in a disrespectful manner? No, I don't. I think that's awful. I don't know how you change that, though.
I'm just saying freedom of speech should alleviate you from consequences when everyone else has to deal with the consequences of your freedom of speech based on the power and the platform in which you stand on.
Well, that is my point, is my freedom extends to the point where it doesn't impinge on yours. So at the point that my exercising my freedom impinges on your freedom, then that's a problem in my view.
And that means the more powerful, the larger audience I get, the greater the responsibility, right? With great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
So your freedom of speech it has to have controls and boundaries around it, not to impact the others. And I think that's what the issue. I can't yell fire in a movie theater because I'm free to do so, right? So I think, so that's what I'm saying. I agree, but that's not what the amendment says by itself.
No,
and I think this is what the law professor is saying is we take that amendment, we look at it in a vacuum, and we apply it to issues, not thinking about what some of the other rights that giving people freedom to speech or saying that they have a freedom to do so really imposes upon throughout the Constitution.
And one of the quorums that she has is she said that behavior allows the most powerful members of society to reap the benefits of these constitutional rights at the expense of vulnerable groups.
Well, let's face it. You want to open up a can of worms? The most powerful Americans, the politicians work for us, right?
They're supposed
The
to.
elected officials work for us. When's the last time you heard, or when do you expect to hear Joe Biden, or you put the name in, pick a Republican, pick whomever, come up and say, I'm having this event. You can come to it, not going to cost you a thing. It's all fundraising. And if it's at the local level, it's probably $25, $50, $100. If it's a state level, it's probably $100, $500, $1,000. If it's a federal level,
That's 25,000.
$25,000 and up. Okay, so where's our voice? So who gets into that? We want to, you know, whether you're, they talk about the top 1%, but the 1% is the only ones that are being listened to at that level because they're the only ones that can pay the admission price.
And that was what was talked about in the article, the Citizens United situation and how that plays in. So I would like to see this conversation continue.
Well, we're going to have a segment on this, and I'm being told we're out of time, by the way. So we may want to wrap.
All right. Well, we'll leave the last time. Let's move this next topic till next week.
We can.
I'm sure we're still going to have plenty to say about that.
Oh yeah.
All right. Perfect. Well, that's all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. Most importantly, we hope you'll join us again next week for another episode of The Flip Side.